Thank you for your mediation efforts and for providing a platform for negotiations on food problems and grain exports. With your mediation, we've moved forward. Not all issues have been resolved yet, but the fact that there is movement is already good.
We're going to discuss this now with Tom O'Connor, a senior foreign policy writer at Newsweek. He joins us from Staten Island in New York. Tom, as always, welcome to the program. To the relief of many, there's finally some movement on the issue of grain actually being able to leave Ukraine. But how optimistic are you that an agreement will actually be reached and that grain will get to those who need it most right now?
Well, I think that certainly it's a hopeful sign that we hear both sides talking about progress after the recent talks in Tehran. At the same time, of course, there hasn't yet been a finalized agreement reached, and it's something that there are still some hurdles to overcome in order to get to. And I think part of this that we're looking at right now, that part of those hurdles, I should say, is the fact that Russia will almost certainly be asking for something in return. It's very unlikely to me that Russia would open up these corridors without receiving some sort of compromise from the other side. That could be Russia exporting its own wheat. That could be exporting Ukrainian wheat from places under Russian control in Ukraine. We still have to see exactly how this will be fleshed out and also we'll also have to see how Ukrainian officials would want to agree to this or not. And of course, it's something that we're still looking to see right now how the Ukrainians will respond.
Well, Dmitry Medvedev, he's Russia's former president, but he's also now the deputy head of the Security Council in Russia. He has said peace in Ukraine will only be on Moscow's terms. What do you think those terms will look like? Do you think they'll actually be then related to the export of grain and opening up those channels for grain to leave the Ukraine?
Yeah, well, Russia has put out its demands for the war and the end of the war. It put them out pretty early on in the conflict. Of course, they were pretty broad enough that there's still a lot of room for interpretation there. That, of course, has to do with the demilitarization of Ukraine, the denazification of Ukraine, and independence of the Donetsk and Luhansk republics, or a recognition of Crimea. These are things that, of course, Russia is seeking to want to achieve before the end of the war. I think there are other things, of course, as you mentioned, probably economic and to do with trade. What are the future of these territories under Russian control? Will they become de facto a part of Russia? Will Russia annex them? Will they become independent? And in what way will this trade be represented when it comes to the world economy? Of course, this is a priority for those countries that are essentially starving right now and are food insecure. They rely on this sort of wheat coming in, and with the prices right now, with the lack of supply, it's a really difficult position that they're in right now. At the same time, I think that the Russian officials, his words came in response as well from the Ukrainian side, which had said that there is no reason for talks right now, and they want to see how the battlefield really plays out. And I think we're at a point in the conflict right now where both sides are kind of testing to see how much they can gain, what they can defend, and what they can take.
Well, speaking of the battlefield, British military intelligence says Russians are understaffed, poorly coordinated, and struggling to maintain their positions. But at the same time, they've taken huge parts of the Donbas, which has always been a major goal for Moscow. At this stage, do you think Russia's army is also regrouping? Do they have the resources and the will and stamina to continue this fight?
Yeah, well, certainly deep and massive shortcomings in the Russian strategy were apparent from the very first days of the conflict, but they just have to be better than the Ukrainians, essentially. And that is also a problem the Ukrainians are facing right now when it comes to manpower, when it comes to resources. Russia still has displayed a capacity to sustain its war effort, to produce the armaments it needs. When it comes to staffing and when it comes to command and control, there does at least seem to be some shortcomings there, but the war goes on. From the Ukrainian side, there is a heavy dependence on the West right now, especially for the support. And of course, as these shipments drag on of weapons and the Ukrainian demand list grows longer, there also is a sort of a balance that's being struck on the Western side of things from the U.S. and other European countries as to their own priorities and needs and how much they also will be able to sustain their own shipments to Ukraine. And with this war going on and with, of course, the coastal areas particularly affected and parts of Ukraine that are vital to Ukraine's economy, there is concerns that Ukraine is also in a very precarious position to continue its own war effort.
Tom O'Connor, always great to get your take on this story, speaking to us there from Staten Island. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thank you.